Fox News alert: President Trump taking a victory lap after Senate Republicans appear to have secured enough votes to advance his Supreme Court nominee. The president at a packed rally near Pittsburgh last night, hitting back at Democrats who've been pushing to block any nomination prior to the election, while he applauded Republicans for their handling of the high-stakes issue. Watch.
Now, we're going to pick an incredible woman, brilliant woman. We have great support from the Republican Party, tremendous support. It's never been this unified before. The appointment of a United States Supreme Court justice was much more important to the voters than I thought.
The president says he will name his choice on Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern and has narrowed his list down to 5 female judges who he calls brilliant, great scholars. This is Outnumbered, and I'm Melissa Francis, here today, Town Hall editor and Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich, attorney and Fox News contributor Emily Compagno, syndicated radio host and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall, and joining us today, former White House press secretary for George W. Bush and Fox News contributor Ari Fleischer. Ari, what do you think of the messaging from the president on this? He's using it to drive rallies. He has even made it appointment viewing to tell people exactly what time he's going to make that announcement well ahead of time, I guess, so that we all tune in and watch. What do you think? What do you think of his artistry here on that front?
Yeah, and I thought also the spontaneous crowd bursting in to fill that seat was pretty notable. Donald Trump does know how, like an orchestra leader, to move something through an audience, and the audience gave it right back. Fill that seat. This is also a testament, though, Melissa, to the 2018 election. If you remember, Republicans lost the House, but they picked up 2 seats in the Senate, and that's made all the difference in the world, because if you lost Snow and if you lost Murkowski, they might not have the votes here. But they picked up 2 seats, and every Democrat in a battleground state who voted against Brett Kavanaugh was defeated. 4 incumbent Democrats. The 1 incumbent Democrat in a Republican state, West Virginia, who voted for Kavanaugh was reelected. So the reason that this might go through is because of the 2018 midterm election.
Now, speaking of those votes in particular, Senator Chris Murphy has been critical of Republicans, he says, for backing something they don't know that much about yet. Let's listen to that, and Katie, I'll get your reaction.
I mean, the Republican Party is just a cult. They'll do anything that the president says. That's been proven over and over again, and that's been exposed in the last few days with so many Republican senators essentially declaring support for a nominee that they haven't seen. At some moments over the last few weeks, I've thought maybe it would just be easier if Republicans confirmed the justice before he or she is named, because it doesn't appear that they're that interested in actually hearing the person.
Katie, the Republican Party is a cult, as opposed to all of the never-Trumpers out there like Mitt Romney who have done everything to thwart him. Maybe in this case, because Mitt Romney has said that he will listen, he's open to the idea of a nominee being put out. But for the record, he has not said he will support whoever that is, right?
Correct. Mitt Romney has said he will not block a vote on the floor. He has not indicated whether he would vote yes or no. He said he's going to listen to the qualifications of the nominee and make that decision, just like all of the other Republicans who have said they're going to move forward with the nomination process. But when it comes to what the president is doing on Saturday, you have to remember that Democrats are also vilifying the nominee, whoever she may be, based on a list that President Trump has put out before they know who it is. They've already said that Amy Coney Barrett is a Catholic cult member. They've attacked her religion previously in Senate hearings. They've attacked other women who are on this list before they know if they're actually nominated. So if you're going to accuse Republicans of voting for someone before they've heard from them, Democrats have already attacked the person before they know who it is. And to the Republicans' credit, they may have decided whether they are going to vote for this person before hearings, because President Trump has put out this list of Supreme Court nominees, he has said, and narrowed it down to a woman. So they have been able to look at the records of the women on that list and decide for themselves ahead of time whether they will be qualified to sit on the highest court. So Joe Biden has not done the same for Democrats or for the American people, despite saying he would do so earlier this year.
Leslie, that's an interesting point because, in fact, Vice President Biden used that viciousness that we've seen from Democrats where they have torn to shreds whoever the candidate was on a personal basis, have made it really something that you have to decide with you and your family. Are you willing to risk everything to go forward to serve your country and be on the Supreme Court? It didn't used to be like this, but then Joe Biden turns around and he uses that as his reasoning for not putting his list out there, that then his people would become, subject to this treatment. Do you think that's a good idea, or has the president struck on something smart, making it a marketing tool during an election? By the way, just so you know ahead of time, if you're going to vote for me, here's the menu of judges that I'm going to be choosing from. If you like that, let me know and vote for me. Should Biden do the same thing?
It's a marketing tool on both sides. Joe Biden putting out a list at this point is futile. I mean, one, he is not president yet, might be, hopefully for my side, the Democrats in November, he will be. Two, looking at the court, will there be another vacancy soon or in the first 4, or if he is reelected, 8 years of his presidency? But using it as a marketing tool is smart, because I got to tell you, Republicans might be united and unified, as the president says, but they're not united and unified to listening to the American people, because the American people, the latest polls show, are united in over 60% saying wait till after the election to put this replacement on the court. Half of Republicans are saying that. And by the way, we Democrats want to thank the Republicans because this has put a match under the butt of some voters who maybe were apathetic and not planning to vote in November. But certainly this issue as a marketing tool is helping to energize and create that enthusiasm that was lacking for my party on the left, for the Biden-Harris ticket, and for some of those state races as well.
That sounds like good marketing to me. We'll see if that comes true. In the meantime, Emily, I want to ask you about this. Congressman Jim Jordan pushing a resolution that would prevent any party from packing the court and limit the bench to 9 justices. The Ohio Republican writing in the measure, quote, any attempt to increase the number of justices of the Supreme Court of the United States or, quote, pack the court would undermine our democratic institutions and destroy the credibility of our nation's highest court. The move comes after Joe Biden refuses to rule out expanding the high court if he wins in November, something a growing number of Democrats want to do if GOP senators confirm President Trump's nominee before Inauguration Day. Emily, so this is what struck me about this story, and I need your legal opinion, because if Jim Jordan is saying we're going to put this in place and this will prevent packing the court, can't the same people that are going to vote to pack the court vote to overturn whatever it is that Jim Jordan puts out now? Isn't it just like kind of in the same basket of things they can work with?
That's exactly right, Melissa, and that's partly why, A, we see this type of legislation every time this subject comes up, including most recently with now Justice Kavanaugh, and also why it's exhausting, because it's a waste of everyone's time. Now, obviously, the Supreme Court has gone through changes throughout the years, but I think now it, to use Leslie's word, is futile. I think the WSJ editorial board was apt in pointing out, however, that it is a disservice and an impediment to Biden's campaign right now for the Democratic voters, that he, A, refuses to address the court-packing attempts and also refuses to name who he might nominate. Correct, he's not president yet, but absolutely that menu, that suite of potential nominees would be crucial. As all of us are noting the importance of the Supreme Court, we are all talking about, everyone collectively, that regardless what side you're in, you all find that the court is paramount and trumps a lot of other issues. So if that is true, then shouldn't every candidate, especially a confirmed presidential candidate, in fact put out who they would nominate? I'd like to make a quick point that Katie touched on, the Catholic narrative that is now being pushed again as Feinstein's comments are resurrected about the dogma lives loudly within you to Judge Barrett during the confirmation process. The Honorable John T. Noonan Jr. of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that I worked for, he was a strong Catholic, and he defied being ideologically pigeonholed. He was responsible for so many notable decisions that both Democrats and Republicans lauded, including political persecution for asylum, and introducing battered women's syndrome as a mitigating factor. So I think as an attorney and as a Catholic myself, I sort of find it appalling that it has now become another talking point from the left to be used against a future justice or judges right now that their element of faith is some type of impediment and not something that should be accepted and frankly supported.
Melissa, can I jump in for 1 second?
Sure.
Thank you. Two things. As a Democrat, I consider 6-3, whether it's a liberal court or a conservative court, packing the court, one. And two, if Joe Biden puts out a list with just one name, and that name is Michelle Obama, Republicans will wish they never asked for that list. And Republicans will lose in the House, the Senate, and the Oval Office.
Okay. Okay, Ari, I want to get back to, thank you for that. I want to get back to what Emily just said, because this is something that has been bothering me as well. That dogma comment from Dianne Feinstein. Full disclosure, I myself am Catholic as well. But I always wonder, you know, if you made that exact comment, you know, the dogma speaks for within you, or I don't have it in front of me, I did the other day, about a Muslim woman, you would be accused of being xenophobic. If you said it about Ruth Bader Ginsburg or about a Jewish woman, you would be accused of being anti-Semitic. But it seems like you can say these things about Christians and Catholics, and people go, is that because they tie it to the issue of abortion? Is it because Christians are, you know, free, you can go after them? Or is it because Jessica Tarlov said the other day that she was talking about her putting, you know, the Bible ahead of her duty to the law or some such thing? That was. Do any of those kind of responses? Why do you think it is that you're allowed to attack Christians and Catholics in that way?
Yeah. You know, I just cannot imagine being Jewish if I had to testify or I was up for nomination in the United States Senate, which I will never be, and somebody said to me something about my faith as if it was a disqualifying matter. It would violate all the tolerance, the tradition, the norms that are so deeply held and important to our country. It's one of the glues that holds us together as a people, that you can be faithful, and it's not an issue in politics. Yet it is if you're Catholic, yet it is if you're devout. And it's really worrisome to me because it's part of the moral decay, and it's part of the lack of respect for people who come from different walks of life that we're seeing in this country. So it is a double standard. You can do it to Christians, you can do it to Catholics, but you can't do it to Jews, you can't do it to Muslims, you can't do it to other minorities, but you can to a plurality, the largest religions in the United States. Very worrisome. It's a big mistake for the Democrats to cross that line of breaching tolerance, and Senator Feinstein did it. Now, what is important is that nobody puts the Bible ahead of the law. If it's one thing to be religious in America, and that is part of who we are. But we are a secular country where the law is what people in office have to uphold, not their religious tenets. But you don't call somebody out because they hold religious tenets.
Thank you for clearing that up. All right, new polls showing the race for the White House neck and neck in key states that could decide the election. The impact this could have on both campaigns just 41 days out from that election day.
Well, new polls show Joe Biden and President Trump deadlocked in several key states with just 41 days until Election Day. Both are tied at 47% among likely voters in Iowa and Georgia. And a similar story in Florida and Arizona, where likely voters give the president a slight edge, though it falls within the survey's margin of error. In the meantime, many are beginning to speculate on how the president's choice for a Supreme Court nominee could energize voters. Political reports that for some in the president's political orbit, quote, the imperative is to do anything possible to win the election, and Barbara Lagoa would be an undeniable boon. They say a Florida-based Cuban-American jurist from a must-win state who might also help the president in Hispanic-heavy Arizona and Nevada. So, Ari Fleischer, it's interesting to watch the momentum for the polling fall on the president's side, and I wonder if Joe Biden's refusal to really go out and campaign in a more traditional fashion is starting to catch up with him with 41 days to go.
Well, I think there's no question the reason Joe Biden left his basement and hit the campaign trail is because nervous Democrats told him he had to post-convention, as I saw the battleground polls start to tighten up. But, Katie, I think it is fair to say the president is still behind in most of the polls. If take Iowa, if that's accurate, he won Iowa by 10 points. So being even is not enough. Georgia, he won by, I believe it was 5 points. So being even is not enough. Now, What we all do know is because of 2016, every one of us has to look at the polls and go, this thing tightens. That was the history in 2016. I suspect that's an accurate history, accurate foretelling of what will happen here in 2020. So I've said all along, this is a 50-50 race. That continues to be what it looks like. Turnout is going to be through the roof. 2016's turnout, which was about 135 million voters, broke all records. We're going to break that broken record, or that record from 2016 here in 2020. And I think the Supreme Court nomination will break it even higher. Everybody is going to have an incentive to turn out. 50-50 race.
So, Melissa, I know how you feel about polling. I got a text message from Public Policy Polling this week for the Arizona presidential race, and I haven't lived in Arizona for over a decade. So the polling, of course, is always questionable. However, what is it about what's happening and Joe Biden having to explain his positions now that there are big things on the table, like a Supreme Court nominee, how he would handle the COVID crisis, and kind of backing up these arguments he's been making against the president ahead of the debate on Tuesday?
You know, it's interesting, and if you heard the ding in the first segment on my phone, that was actually, you know, somebody for the independent candidates out there trying to get me to answer a poll and trying to get me to do something. So it is so funny because we all look at how do they get our numbers and what do they read into this information and how accurate is all of it. I know they're all doing the best they can. It's a difficult science. But in any case, I think that one thing that's really interesting about this is that the further we get away from the heart of the COVID crisis, and we are obviously still deep in it, and I don't want to diminish anything that's going on right now, but as sort of the meat of it begins to be further behind us and we get our arms around the information and we start to recover a little bit, the strategy of Joe Biden not going out and talking to people, there's less of a justification for it. And people start to wonder, more, why aren't they seeing him more? And you see, President Trump has been out there all of the time. I think that it's interesting to watch this judge scenario and the way that they approach it. Joe Biden's not going to put his list forward. I think the reason is because if it's too left, that's going to upset one group. If it's too centrist, that's going to upset another. I think that's the real reason, as opposed to the president seeing the opportunity. And when he looks at a Cuban American in Florida, it proves that he doesn't see Hispanics as a monolith the way the Democrat Party has. And Democrats, Hispanics are on their side because President Trump is a racist or because he opposes immigration. And they don't realize that this is a very diverse group, that Cuban Americans in Florida look for something else. They don't like the Democrats because of what happened with Joe Biden and President Obama's stance. And then I see others still making the same case saying, well, Hispanics in Arizona, if he picks this judge in Florida, Hispanics in Arizona will support him. Why? They're not Cubans. I mean, that's that same mistake where you're saying this is all one group. And President Trump, I think, sees all the different nuances and he picks off different groups by recognizing them as, being not part of this larger umbrella and doing the identity politics of you all, have the same color skin, so you have the same beliefs.
Yeah, so Leslie, Joe Biden needs momentum on his side. He needs some enthusiasm. President Trump has the enthusiasm on his side. But take a look at what he said about Wisconsin voters in his pitch to them to try and win on Election Day.
If you could address our camera directly, talk to the voters that are worried about socialism and you raising taxes.
I beat the socialists. That's how I got elected. That's how I got the nomination. Do I look like a socialist? Look at my career, my whole career. I am not a socialist.
But Leslie, doesn't he need the Bernie Sanders coalition to win in places like Wisconsin when they voted for Trump last time?
I have to be honest, when I heard that, not him saying I'm not a socialist, but him talking about beating the socialists, which we all know is Vermont Senator Sanders, Bernie Sanders, who did very well, by the way, in 2016 with Wisconsin, and also has a lot of voters, as we know, in 2016, approximately 12% that voted for Donald Trump or stayed home because of their disdain for Hillary and their love for Bernie. They're Bernie or bust folks, and we need those people to vote, whether they vote by mailing it in or coming out. So I did cringe a little bit. But this is a very different year. for 2020, and not just because of the COVID pandemic. I don't believe there are those secret individuals who are afraid to say, and they were undecided in 2016, that they are going to support Donald Trump. You talked about enthusiasm, Katie. If there's so much enthusiasm for Donald Trump, then how come he's not leading Joe Biden by bigger numbers in states like Texas, Florida, Iowa, Arizona? And when you look at the 3 states that put him over the line into the White House, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, Joe Biden is leading Donald Trump in all 3.
We need 9 justices. You need that. With the unsolicited millions of ballots that they're sending, it's a scam. It's a hoax. Everybody knows that. And the Democrats know it better than anybody else. So you're going to need 9 justices up there.
President Trump doubling down in his push to fill the Supreme Court vacancy, warning that there need to be 9 justices on the bench ahead of Election Day to deal with any legal battles that could emerge over mail-in ballots. There are already court challenges and issues in states across the country with more than 260,000 votes already cast. Can you believe that? In the meantime, FBI and Homeland Security officials are warning that foreign hackers will likely look to exploit the additional time required to announce the election results in order to sow chaos. No kidding. All right, Emily, let me start with you and get a little legal opinion. We are already seeing a lot of challenges to rules being changed. We saw in Pennsylvania a change to the length of time where you can get your ballot postmarked. What do you think of this from a legal perspective?
Right, as well, naked ballots and the like. From a legal perspective, Trump is absolutely right in that, yes, we need 9 justices, and here's why. First of all, in the inevitability of the legal battles that will emerge after election season, shall we say, because it won't be a day, and that we're seeing right now, if there are 8 and there is a tie, then it goes back automatically to the lower court, and the lower court's ruling stands. So imagine how important then forum would be, how paramount the geographic location where these cases take place will be. Imagine it coming out of the California Supreme Court, for example, right? So you can expect those answers, and it renders the Supreme Court moot, frankly. And a word as well about the Ninth Circuit, because people often discuss it and cite it as a certain ideological bent. But recall that Trump has appointed 10 judges to the Ninth Circuit, and the ideological bent has frankly shifted. Recall Obama, I think, appointed 3 in 7 years. So there's quite a shift going on in the country, but he's absolutely right. And I also point to the fact that in addition to the legal battles that we will see raging, that we have started to see raging already, we will also see a concurrent messaging battle going on, right? Both campaigns are going to be messaging. The public's battle is going to be playing out as well. So all of that stuff is equally important, but I think everyone should roll up their sleeves and be prepared that it will be a probably, in vernacular, a pretty violent season for those battles.
Agreeing with President Trump in the sense that, you know, this is we need the judges. The Wall Street Journal writing this in an op-ed. Pressies amusing themselves by inventing behavior by Donald Trump as the source of every problem, but any election involving any 2 candidates would descend into legal chaos if the margin is significantly less than the number of rejected ballots. Never mind the thornier question of ballots that should have been rejected. Vote in person. It's not more dangerous than going to the grocery store, and will help reduce the scope for November, December chaos. Ari, what do you think about that? Telling people go vote in person, it will reduce the chaos.
100% right and safe, and the best way to have your vote counted. Look, Melissa, I've lived through this. I was a spokesman for George Bush in the 2000 campaign, and I don't want anybody to have to go through that again. What we really want on election night is whichever candidate wins, they win by a sufficiently large margin, as Donald Trump did in 2016, that there is no reason to go to court. I hope we are not in another cliffhanger close election either direction. But, you know, Washington Post did a very good story a couple months ago about mail-in voting, and it concluded that based on all history and practice, because of human error, mail-in voting, you are 3 times more likely to have your vote thrown out, rejected, than in-person voting. People make human errors. It's not voter suppression. It's not voter fraud. It's not a rigged election. It's human error. but you're 3 times more likely to get your vote thrown out. So if you want your vote to count, vote in person. And as we've been watching, and I've been tracking this all summer and into fall, people have been voting in heavy numbers despite COVID, and it's turned out to be perfectly safe. There have been no outbreaks of COVID as a result of elections in which people showed up by the hundreds of thousands and by the millions in person to the polling places and primaries. So yes, vote in person and hope for a big enough win either direction.
Leslie, I haven't heard any Democrats say that. If they have said that, I haven't heard it. Why is it that Democrats aren't saying go vote in person? It makes it seem like you all are afraid of that and feel like you need the mail-in ballots and you need this other extra voting in order to win. That's the perception. Why not say go vote in person?
I don't agree that that's the perception. I mean, Republicans have basically been saying, look, COVID and the president for a long time, COVID's not as big a deal as you think. Go out in person and vote. Democrats have been saying, look, and Joe Biden in his basement for a bit has been leading by that example, saying you got to social distance, you got to wear a mask, you can mail your ballot in. That's the safer option, especially if you're elderly or if you have an underlying health condition. And remember, we don't all know if we have an underlying health condition. So no, I don't think it speaks to that at all. Look, if you just look at the numbers in 2016, mail-in ballots actually benefited Donald Trump at the time with seniors, where he's not doing as well with Joe Biden, another senior who was running, and obviously the absentee ballots with the military. So I don't feel that it raises an eyebrow, if you will, for Democrats to do that. I think it's in line with their message all along regarding COVID. And the other reason is because Democrats don't feel the same with regard to the unproven fraud of these mail-in ballots that Republicans and conservatives and the president has and the information that they're putting out there. The bottom line is, and I agree with Ari on this, Democrats and Republicans both want a winner on election night by a wide enough margin that it doesn't have to go to the courts.
Okay. All right, Katie, you get your turn on the other side. Former 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Michael Bloomberg may be in some legal trouble after reportedly raising millions of dollars to pay off the debts of thousands of Florida felons so they can regain the right to vote ahead of the November election. Interesting. Details ahead.
House Judiciary Committee member Matt Gaetz is warning that former 2020 Democratic candidate Michael Bloomberg could be facing a criminal probe after reportedly raising $16 million to pay off the fines of 32,000 convicted felons in Florida in order for them to vote in November.
I spoke to the Florida Attorney General last night, and a criminal probe may already be underway. It is a felony for someone to either directly or indirectly offer something of value to impact whether or not someone votes. So in this case, you have the question of whether or not paying someone's restitution and court costs constitutes something of value. When you extinguish a liability, when you improve your balance sheet, when you improve your net worth, that is, of course, something of value.
This all stems from a Bloomberg memo obtained by the Washington Post, which reads, quote, "We know to win Florida, we will need to persuade, motivate, and add new votes to the Biden column. This means we need to explore all avenues for finding the needed votes when so many votes are already determined." So, Emily, the law in Florida allows felons to vote after they have fully served their sentences, but the law also requires that the felons themselves pay off the fines or any other legal fees they may have. And when you have the Bloomberg team openly saying we're paying people to vote for Biden, that sure sounds like bribery to me.
Right. Well, and that's what the congressman is arguing. And that's exactly why the court here will be so important, because it will be up to them to determine whether, in fact, that is a thing of value. A word, however, given I've spent hundreds of hours in federal prisons and jails, and I feel differently about restoring votes to felons. There's rough calculations at about 24 million convicted felons in this country, and I don't agree with condemning them to a civic death. There's not enough time in this show to go into why those fines and obligations are so crippling and such an example of budget dysfunction and bureaucratic bloat in this country. So I am all for easing the transition of these felons back into society and aiding their reentry. Reminder, over 10% of those convicted felons are U.S. veterans as well. So for all of us we kind of have a bipartisan support into criminal justice reform and the like, it behooves all of us to support that reentry and restoring civic benefits to these guys. Of course, there are exceptions, obviously, but I think the courts here will decide that. But I'm not going to support condemning them to that kind of civic death.
Well, Melissa, the Florida state legislature and the governor also believe that felons should have a second chance at voting once they fulfill their obligations. The issue here is whether Michael Bloomberg is bribing these people by paying off their fees and legal obligations to the state in return for 32,000 votes for Joe Biden. That's the issue here.
Right. Well, there's no guarantee, of course, that those people are going to go out and vote for Joe Biden. I think what bothers me about this story is anytime you talk about one of these guys, you should talk about the larger group. But there are a number of people who are using their great wealth in order to influence the system, influence politics, and influence elections, whether we are talking about Michael Bloomberg or Tom Steyer or George Soros or the Koch brothers or any of those folks who go out there and use their vast wealth. Every time you see the situation, you want to drill down on the details, because at our heart, our country is supposed to be about a level playing field, one person, one vote. And when you see somebody get in there and use a giant mountain of money to influence an election, it is inherently uncomfortable. At the same time, it's their money, it's their right. You just have to do it legally, and maybe legislators want to take a look at what these folks are doing and make the appropriate laws to stop them from doing that. Those are my thoughts.
Leslie, real quickly, from the Democrat point of view.
I got to be honest, I looked at the law today. I'm not an attorney, did 5 minutes in law school. The Florida Rights Restoration Coalition is a part of this, and that's what Bloomberg is working with. The problem really isn't the money, but when you look under Florida law, third-degree felony for someone to directly or indirectly provide something of value to impact whether someone votes or not who they vote for. It's not just the money, it's further a memo, quite frankly, that the Bloomberg camp put out that could be difficult, quite frankly, when it comes to trying to help these people pay their fines after they've paid their debts to society so that they can vote this November.
All right. Well, we are minutes away from the grand jury releasing its report in the Breonna Taylor case, 6 months after she was fatally shot by police carrying out a no-knock warrant, leading to massive protests. We'll take you there next live. Plus, the long-awaited Burisma report is out on Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings, what it says, and whether Republicans got the answers they were looking for.